What did you refer to the Sheik as when you were a kid?
Sheik. No, you know.
As a kid, Poppy, Grandpa, nothing.
Yeah, well, that's what he wanted. I didn't say dad. I didn't say uncle. It was Sheik.
Sheik.
Yeah. Even his wife, my mother, all of his kids didn't call him dad. They called or Edward, or they called him Sheik. You know.
His kids didn't call him dad. Called him Sheik.
Everybody called him Sheik, and if you didn't, he corrected you.
Right. You said on a previous show also that in describing why you didn't want to talk on camera, not on the show, but in wrestling, was that it was just who you weren't comfortable. You said you had a social anxiety. Is that something you dealt with from childhood?
Oh, yeah. Like right now, I'm not having a problem talking because I'm comfortable with you. But usually I have a problem talking, especially with a crowd, you know.
But when you were a child, though?
Same then.
Like in school, like if you had to be called in class?
I'd panic if I had to say something in front of the class. Wow. Yeah, I'd like to shit myself.
And was it ever... And to go into wrestling where you're in front of...
Well, because I like the physical wrestling, tumbling part. I didn't like the talking bullshit. So I figured if I was really good at the wrestling, I wouldn't have to do the talking bullshit, you know. Did
Sheik ever say, you have to start to learn to work a microphone?
Yes, from day one. And then I did a little bit, then I cut this promo one time, you know, and he said, promise me you'll never talk again.
All you had to do to be asked never to talk again was to talk once.
Yes. It was great when he said that.
Was he serious?
Yeah. I was, you know, some guys got it and some guys don't. And he was a believer, and so was Paulie. You know, you emphasize the guy's strengths, not his weaknesses. Right. You know, and so if he's strong at this, let's push that. You can work on the other stuff, but if he's not good at it, there's a time you have to say, okay, you're not good at it, stop it. You know.
Do you think that social anxiety played a part in? You know, we talked earlier about not having the opportunities, maybe not being a good wrestling politician, not being able to go to a boss and make a case for an angle. Did it get in your way at all?
Yeah, I'm a terrible politician. I figured if you're good enough. It don't matter whose ass you kiss or what you do behind the scenes. If you're good enough and you're drawing people, that should be the bottom line. You know, it shouldn't be who you're friends with or who you buddy up with. It should be on your merits only, I think.
It should be, but that's not the real world.
And I'm not a politician. I'm terrible at it. I wish I was. Not really. I'm glad I'm not. But if I was, I'd been in a lot better position now than I am.
In doing the ECW series, I'm remembering now that I said something wrong to a lot of the talent recently. I was talking to Rob Van Dam last week, and we did Raven today. And every time someone tells a Paulie story about being fucked out of money or robbed or told he's going to get a check the next week, and we ran out of checks, what do you want me to do? They all say, right. They always say it with a laugh.
Well, you have to.
Except you, one time when we had your show, you talked about the night that you had to take a show, he had to take a shot in Japan.
Yeah.
And he got in the ring and fucked you.
Yeah. Motherfuckered me.
Yeah. And I mean, and that hurt, you got emotional. That really was a betrayal for you from Paulie. So for all this, like, Paulie's the lovable bad guy, he did hurt you.
Yeah. He took it like a bitch, and instead of trying to make up or fix what happened, he wanted to punish me, you know. And all I was going to do was miss a show and pick up next week, the following week. That's all I was going to do. Right. I wasn't going to goodbye forever. It was one fucking show. And I talked to Benoit, Malenko, the little prick, and Taz, and someone else.
Why is Dean
Public Enemy?
Why is Dean a prick?
What?
Dean?
Yeah.
Why is he a prick?
You don't know?
I haven't worked with him.
He's a little asshole. But anyways, we'll get to him in a minute.
Okay.
I called those guys and said, hey, I'm going to go to Japan. And they go, yeah, take the money. And then the very next day, they motherfuckered me. You know, the two-faced pricks. Right. And now Dean, that's why he's a little bastard, because one of the things is that he's he's very two-faced.
You know, another thing I never asked you, on You Shoot, Pee Wee was throwing out names of people, and he mentions Andre the Giant, and you go, that fucking asshole? Why'd you say that?
Because, like, Andre, you know, he's a giant.
He worked for your uncle all the time, right?
Well, yeah, he respected my uncle. He didn't respect nobody else, almost. You know, when he seen anybody, everybody was below him. And, of course, they're shorter than him, but that don't make them, you know, less anything. And he treated everybody like that, even me, and he didn't even know me, you know.
Really? Okay.
So I didn't really like him. I was amazed I had the size, but I really didn't like him.
So, in talking about the business and talking about promoters, I have to ask you, because it's such a hot issue, what responsibility does the business have for so much of the abuses with chemicals that we see? Is it almost an occupational hazard, that if you're going to do this, you're going to be exposed to pain pills.
Because injuries are common, so of course we're going to take pain pills. Not everybody takes them, and not everybody gets hooked from them. Just that when a wrestler dies, it makes the press. But when someone dies on your neighborhood block, it barely makes the press. But the same amount, could have been the same way, and the same amount, many people has died. But if you're a wrestler, entertainer, it's magnified that industry is, or that corner of the industry is bad.
Do you think the business, though, has a responsibility to monitor it and to?
No, you got to do that yourself. We're men.
Right, but because you're being asked to do things that are so risky.
I'm gonna tell you, no one asked or ordered me to do one backflip, and if they did, I did a different backflip. I was all voluntary. If I broke a bone, I ain't blaming it on nobody, unless my opponent did it on purpose or stupidly. But I don't blame it on the promoter or the business. I would have did it anyways, regardless of the money or where I was. I would have still wanted to do it, So you can't blame. No one forced me to do anything. I heard these guys go, I cut my head for Paulie and I broke my bone for Paulie. Bullshit. You begged Paulie to be on the show and you cut your head to impress him, and you broke your bones because you tried too hard. So don't put the shit on Paulie. Paulie does a lot of things, but he can't make you do what you do. He could have told me not to do my stuff, and I would have did it. I would have did twice as much.
But there is also kind of a tacit understanding where if you don't make that dive tonight, promoter might say, the match was a little flat.
Maybe, but if that dive is going to make or break you, then you're probably not very good at the other stuff. Everybody goes, wow, he's a good wrestler. He can do a moonsault. Yeah, but can he do a headlock? Can he do an arm drag? Those things you do first, and then you do a moonsault or something pretty for icing on the cake. Because you have icing, don't mean you have a good foundation.
Your first exposure to drugs, did you see any of it in Detroit, working the Detroit territory, the boys there?